Okay, good morning and welcome to the panel titled Growing Your Social Following, Campaign Tools and Tactics. So I want to dive on in. I don't have the answers. They all prepared awesome answers ahead of time. We're nerdy and we force them to watch videos and stuff on how to prep. But we're going to throw that all out the window. You guys have all practiced some stuff. I want to tell you, I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. You know, we're talking about growing our social following. Is social media, this is a terrible question, and I hate vague questions, but is social media still alive? And if so, what's the new way to do it? Because a lot of people look at quantity. There's a lot of old school brands that 3 years ago were like, how many followers do you have? And call me old school, but I care less about followers. I care more about what is important now. And I'm going to start with Cynthia, with you first.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about this before the breakout started, and I mean, I think that social is still alive and well, but I do think that it's changed, and that, you know, while it used to be really important to have, you know, how many likes and, you know, how many followers, it's less about that and more about creating really great content. Ultimately, the goal is to build a relationship with your client, with your customer or your followers, and, you know, it all starts with great content. So, you know, not using it, I see a lot of brands that try to use it where they try to shout out their own message and talk about themselves, but really try to listen to their followers and try to build a relationship by providing really relevant content that it's going to be meaningful, you know, similar to some of the stuff that you were sharing that you share with your audience. You know, It's all about sharing really great content that's going to be meaningful and useful and valuable to them.
Nick, what's working these days in social?
Well, for us specifically on the entertainment side, you know, we tell stories about other stories, and, you know, social following is now what we refer to as a vanity metric. So we don't really try to build a social following. We just really have to mine and figure out where these stories are and where we can see them out to build that connection with an audience.
That's cool, a vanity metric, I think. How many of you run social or work with somebody that runs social at your company? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have a lot of people on this end and a third of the people over here. How many of you are frustrated with social? Raise your hand. Don't be shy, be honest. Yeah, a few of us are frustrated with social. Tracy, I hear that loud and clear over here. All right, so Christy, let's dive into, you work on a lot of accounts. Your company's pretty big. You have 100 employees or something like that, the firm, is that right? Yeah, so you guys are not small, and you get to kind of see every different division, and you have a lot of tactics on social too. Can you talk to us about a couple things that you might be working on right now and how you're engaging on social?
Sure. So the thing that I'm most excited about right now and learning about is influencer marketing and brand ambassadorship. I think that's really exciting and there's a lot to learn. So I'm excited about that. And so wait, what am I answering? I'm so sorry.
So do you guys have any projects you're working on right now? I really want to get into project-based and I want to talk about what not to do on social, and I want to talk about what to do. If that's okay, I'm going to get really tactical. I think that's more fun too for everybody here. Do you have any things to do or maybe something you shouldn't do on social these days?
I think you should be authentic, and kind of combining the last question we talked about, like, do followers matter, like the count and stuff? I think it still does matter, and you still should be getting the counts up and the likes up and all the engagement, because it's a key part of social proof. And so if you want to keep getting the people following you and engaging with you, like the people that matter, you need to have those numbers high. But then, like you said, it better be useful and actually talking to the people, so you need both.
Okay. All right, Nick, talk to us about when you're engaging people, telling a story about a story. What are some tips that you guys have learned? You started off and you probably did it all wrong. I'm not saying you were at the company, it was your project, but what are some things that work when telling a story about a story? How many of us in this room tell a story about a story, maybe, where we're talking about something cool about, I mean, I think, isn't telling the story about our product and doing it on social, telling a story about a story? What should we do?
Well, I think the first thing you really have to understand is understand the category. What are people doing? How are people engaging with it? And then how does that attach to our broader culture? So what does that mean for your brand, your product, and how does that help people in their everyday life? And then you kind of have to really translate that into your core narrative, and that becomes your thesis, which all your content should really pour out of.
Can you give us an example of that? It sounded awesome, but talk to us about something really specific. I'm going to hone in. I'm going to be really tough on the three of you right now, but we're going to get really specific and dive in.
Yeah, a specific project, man, it's a really tough one. All right, so we were fortunate enough to work on a major Netflix superhero show in the past year that just launched, and
Sorry, which one?
Daredevil season 2. We were very fortunate to be able to work on that. I don't know if there's some like weird MPA thing that we can't say that, but anyways, we were very fortunate to work on that, and what we really had to do was find out why people would go from season 1 to season 2. And what they really liked about the show, what they really responded to, was how it was grittier, how it was so much different from all the other superhero content out there. So what we found about the show, so we found that, which was our cultural theme, and then what we had to find next was what our theme of the show, what audiences were responding to from the show, and they really liked that he was a Catholic. He was a conflicted Catholic. And then we bring that out and we combine the two, and it came to a central positioning line of when does right become wrong? And we used that to develop all of our narrative base throughout the entire campaign.
And you listened on social to develop a better narrative.
That is 100%. We use a bunch of different tools. Right now, our primary tool is we use a tool called NetBase, which is a fantastic social listening tool. And then
Netbase.com, is that?
Yeah, netbase.com.
Doing that for all of you to take notes.
They're fantastic. They're really easy to use. They're keyword based. You know, you can pull up a lot of conversation volume. It's the natural language processing, and I'm not here to sell you guys on this. The natural language processing is fantastic. It gets sentiment pretty close to being right. And then from there too, we have a bunch of hand done processes because the limitations of social listening only stop so far. So we have to go into like the superhero blogs, and I mean it's kind of fun because that's what we do on a daily basis, me and my colleague, but that's the stuff we read. But you kind of go in there, scrape by hand, and see what everybody else is saying, and then kind of triangulate that point.
That's awesome. Okay, so I don't have a pen on me, but does anybody have an extra pen? Because I want to take notes. Okay, thank you so much, Tracy. That's very sweet. Okay, so that was our first tool. Let's talk about some other tools. How many of you want to hear about tools? Okay, how many of you want to hear about examples? Great, same amount of hands. Let's dive into both. Christy, let's talk about some tools that you're using right now to build your social following.
Sure. So some specific tools for Twitter are Tweepy, TWEEPI, and Manage Flitter, one word. So both of those, you could pick whichever you like. They kind of do the same thing. They let you see who's following you, sort them by influence, sort them by industry, track the followers of followers, do competitor analysis, all that kind of stuff. On Instagram, I'm loving a tool called Instagress. There's not that many
Can you spell it?
Yeah, Insta, GRESS. All one word. There's another tool called Iconosquare, but it's way more expensive. Instagress, I think, is $10 for 30 days, if I'm remembering correctly. And that also lets you really look at who's following you, how they're following you, and has other functionality.
How many of us are on Instagram for our brand, for our company, our brand? How many of us are spending more time on Instagram than Facebook for our brand? Okay, a third of the room. How many of us are spending more time on Facebook than Instagram, just to see what that number is? Okay, some of you didn't vote. Okay, cool. All right, so Cynthia, back over to you. What are some tools that you're using? And then we're going to dive into some more detailed examples. Get some examples together. So I want to hear some really good stuff. Failures too, or you get extra points for those.
One of the tools that we use a lot is BuzzSumo. And BuzzSumo is great. You can use it for a number of different things. One of the things that you can do with it is to see what content topics are rising to the top in your particular category. So if you're trying to build a content strategy, it's a great place to go because it'll give you a list of the contents that are relevant, and then you can also see who's following it, what their interaction engagements are. But the other thing that you can do, which is what I use it most for, is when you're building influencer marketing strategies, you can put in what category or what you want to build an influencer strategy around, and it will literally put together a list of the top influencers with their following, their contact information. You can download it into an Excel spreadsheet. It's you can look at trends, you can look at interactions and engagements and what conversations have been going on in their area. So it's really a great place to go.
How many of you heard of that tool, BuzzSumo? Okay, a few of us. Great. Any other tools that you're using? Cynthia, are there any Instagram projects you're working on right now, or Twitter? How many of us are working on Twitter? Our brand considers Twitter a pretty important part of our communication strategy. Anybody? You guys do? Okay. Raise your hand if you see a change in Twitter based on the news of them not doing so well. Does that change your view of where you'll be there? Only a couple of us. Okay, cool. What projects are you working on, or examples can you give us on either what went right or what went wrong?
Projects that we're working on that went right.
We can come back.
Yeah.
Hold on to that. Christy, give us an example of something we should not do on social. You're really good at this.
Okay, I have a really bad example.
Good. This is what we're all here for.
I'm embarrassed to even share this, but here we go. Okay, so you have to test everything, right? Constantly. And so Instagress, one of the things that it does is it allows you to set, and this is going to sound kind of manipulative, but it is. Okay, so it lets you take your profile and you can put comments, like whatever you want to write, comments, and then target people or hashtags or locations. And what happens is you can turn it on to be automatic. So for example, my personal Instagram right now is liking and commenting on people all over a certain region with certain hashtags. And that's all great, right? Because I see lots of more followers. I wield this very carefully for a brand though, but here's where it all went wrong. Okay, so when I first started testing it,
this is good.
Okay, so when I first started testing it, I was not as stringent with the hashtags that I had put too many hashtags in there that I wanted to interact with. And anyway, I had started with lenient rules. Okay, so everything was great, but then I started getting comments, and I didn't even know what I was commenting on or liking. And then I started getting weird comments that I would actually see back to me. People being angry or really strange people that I wouldn't have been interacting with. And so then I started looking at what I was doing. I found that I had liked and commented with cute little hearts a man in his underwear with a giant cross like carved on his chest. I would never have liked this thing. I also had liked a picture of a nun flipping off a camera. Like, oh my gosh. And I was horrified and I stopped Instagress. And then I really took a look at how to make these filters more stringent, because these people might be putting hashtags like fit life or fitness that I had been planning on interacting with in a way that I wouldn't have anticipated. So, one more thing. I got a girl saying, "What the hell, Christy Kellogg?" And I was like, why is this person mad? And I went and looked, and apparently I'd put heart comments on her boyfriend's Instagram. I hadn't, the tool had. So you have to be really careful with your tools. The end.
How many of us have ever had that happen to our brand where something went automated and went crazy? Anybody? You seen it? Yeah, it's happened. Have any of you ever used, that's a great story. Have you ever used a follow, like a refollow.com or something that lets you follow people that are using certain keywords? You guys ever done that? I mean, this is basically what you're talking about is influencer outreach to get their attention, to add comments, but you're using a robot to do that.
And I still stand by robots. I think that they're helpful, but you have to be really careful. So just use them sparingly and still be using them in the right ways. Do you think robots are bad?
Well, I think adding hearts to just about anything on Instagram is bad, Christy.
Well, but here's the thing.
Good Lord.
Josh, if I had put like actual words or comments, what would happen if the picture didn't align with what I was saying? Which is why I stuck to just emojis. And because I'm me, I made them all hearts.
Yeah.
So like, anyway.
All right, there we go. Okay, so you guys have any stories of things that went right or wrong? I love the stories that went wrong because I think we all learn a valuable lesson. We had something where that happened too, but less hearts and less Instagram, more Twitter. What's up?
I think an example that I can give, it's not as colorful as Christy's story, but I think the times that it's gone wrong for us, regardless of what client I'm thinking about, are times where we don't really map out a clear brand strategy before we're doing the content push, and it becomes pushing out content just for the sake of content. So, for an example of this is we have a number of different hotels and restaurants in the hospitality vertical. So some of the things that have gone wrong are when we're just pushing out offers for the sake of offers, or it's, National Donut Day kind of post where you're posting, content for the sake of, it's Memorial Day, let's post out a picture of barbecue pictures, and there's not any kind of like really relevant story or strategy behind it. Yeah. And so we have found that the most successful campaigns are really very much more deconstructed type of content and more organic.
What does deconstructed mean? I like this, but I want to be specific.
Like, for example, let's take the hospitality client, for example, so that it doesn't look like an ad. It looks a little bit more authentic.
Let's get more specific. What is the client? Can you say their name and then give us what was the ad that worked?
Sure. So it's the Ritz Hotel. And, instead of posting like a very polished picture of the, beautiful hotel, really trying to get photographs that look like they're taken in real time, that they're, pictures of behind the scenes of the chef, in the kitchen, like having fun with his staff, and, pictures of the staff having fun or customers having fun, so that it looks a little bit more relatable to the people that are going to the, Facebook page or the Instagram page.
What you're really going to get, not beautiful models at the pool, but
right,
a
so
chef.
that it doesn't look so posed. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it looks, particularly in hospitality, there's a lot of things you can do, especially with video, of little fun behind the scenes things of people having fun and laughing, and so that you can really get an idea of what the brand personality is.
Nick, talk to us about something that went right or wrong. Wrong is great, because we'll learn what goes right. All right.
Because I want to follow up on Cynthia's point, and having that, strategy or that concept in place before you go to market is always fantastic. So we worked on another Netflix property, BoJack Horseman season 2, and I personally can't take credit for this creative execution, but in the show, which we were leading up to the show, we were marketing the release of the show, and in the show, one of the characters, she becomes a social media expert for BoJack, the main character, and she drops her phone on the floor and she comments on some bunch of random string of letters, and it became a running joke throughout the show. But prior to that, we actually posted that on BoJack's Instagram, because we've created BoJack as an internet persona in and of itself. So what does a 1980s, cartoon horse do on social media? We've created that persona, and we posted that beforehand, and we knew that immediately after the show had launched, people would automatically picked up on it. And I think the biggest satisfaction of the entire thing was hearing the feedback from the fans, because that was what it was for. It was for these people that love the show, have gone on this journey with us, and they really responded well. I mean, we were on the front page of Reddit, we were on multiple subreddits. Like, that is a testament to having that strategy in place beforehand. And regardless of whether it's a brand or it's a TV show or there's a narrative behind it, I really think you have to have that kind of, not rollout, but you kind of have to have a direction to go in, and you have to feed, who your audience is.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, the rollout. How many of us are frustrated with how much time social takes? Does this suck? Is it a time suck? For those of you on video, most of the room is raising their hand. What a time suck, right? So I want to ask you guys about, and I've got some nerdy tips here too. It's less about me and more about the tips. How do you plan your social? I want tactical tips. Are you using a spreadsheet? Are you brainstorming like writers do in a creative room when you're writing a script? Or are you taking FAQs and answering them? How are you brainstorming and writing them? And if so, the second question is, how far ahead of time do you write them? Do you schedule them 1 week out, 1 day, or a month? Yeah.
Okay, so for our agency, I use an awesome tool called CoSchedule. It's a plugin for WordPress, and that allows you to post to everything except Instagram right there in WordPress, and you can see it all really nicely on a calendar. So I like that a lot. It will do short links for you right in there. As far as how far in advance I plan out, when, say, a blog post comes out, definitely that day, every day that week at strategic times. But then I personally, if I can make the time, like to put it out once a week for the rest of the year, so it's just handled, right? And using different messages slightly. Emojis come in nice here, because you can put, because you can't post the same thing on Twitter through CoSchedule or some apps, so you can just change it slightly by that one character. there's a client that I have, it's a tourism board. For them, we plan out their posts on a spreadsheet, very old school style, and everything is in there, the hashtags they're supposed to use, everything. And that's really nice when you need approval from multiple people that these are the messages we're putting out, then a spreadsheet looks really good for everyone.
That's awesome. What are some other tips? I like the spreadsheet tip. I think, how many of us are using spreadsheets on social? Good to hear. How many of us have ever gotten in trouble when somebody didn't use a spreadsheet in our company? We got frustrated and they tweeted something that was just not super appropriate. Okay, great. All right. Next, how are you guys planning your telling stories about telling stories, Nick?
Well, we start as a brainstorm. We do our upfront research to understand what the property means, what does that all mean?
Yeah.
What does the brand mean? And then we brainstorm what that central positioning is, and then our community managers, our social managers, they kind of go out and they use a spreadsheet to mark out the calendar, what are they gonna do? And then we come back in and we start analyzing the data after the fact. And then we say, this isn't working, this is working, and then our tool specifically allows us to dive into that audience. We are able to segment our audience in a very deep way. So then we come back and we say, all right, well, we started with this, macho musclehead theme, but that really didn't work because more women were interested in the male characters because it was all about surfers with their shirts off. We worked on a show that's basically the whole concept. It's Sons of Anarchy meets surfers. But that's kind of what we found. So then we're able to, halfway through our spreadsheet, we're able to stop, pivot, and change our content. So it helps to have everything laid out. But again, how do we have to work in an agile environment.
Yeah. I think that's really key. We want to plan a couple weeks ahead of time, but we can't because you have to listen and go in and adjust. That's really cool. Cynthia, talk to us about a client where you guys have been posting and where you might be planning some stuff and then diving in to be more spontaneity in between. Do you have anything like that? Do any of you have anything like that where you plan out stuff and then you're also in there retweeting and having fun?
We pretty much do that with all our clients. I think that there's something to be said for planning out, like Nick was saying, we do the same thing where we start out with a brainstorm and build out the entire calendar year for the overall strategy. But then there's also on a parallel track, this continuum of needing to actually have a point person that's focused on the one brand that's actually living it day-to-day life, because there's things that happen on the brand that you're not going to be able to plan for. So what we do is we have a point person for each brand that we work on so that they're looking at the data, and we usually look at data we usually pull it on a weekly basis to really kind of do a deep dive to see if we're testing different messages, what's working and what's not. Yeah. But then that person's also responsible for those daily posts that, there might be something on the news that's related to, like the Ritz Hotel I mentioned, something going on in that area, or, regarding one of the hotels that we want to push to or something like that you can't necessarily plan for. And so we basically have a point person that's the content manager that's responsible for those that will post, the off the cuff posts.
That's cool. All right, I've got a black hat technique for you. You guys ready? This is really bad, but I'm just going to tell you what we did. We don't do it anymore. But when we grew our social following and I don't believe in social media, I wrote a book on it in 2012. And when I ran for politics, I was the most social savvy candidate, but I really don't believe in it. I think your email is more important. I think your URL, your landing page, I think there's so many more signals. I think people that put all their time in social and say they're going to blow up their brand, it's difficult. Now, we have PPC talk later today. So we're going to talk about advertising on social. I do think there's a lot of value there. But just posting on Facebook, I think the algorithm is against us as marketers. And I think we now are competing with baby photos. And when people jump on Facebook and they go, I need to follow that brand that was talking to me, and they see, oh my God, look how adorable that little puppy is. No, you're never going to compete with that, right? I don't care what business you're in, you're not going to compete. So I want to talk to you about some influencer outreach techniques that we used. Refollow.com is kind of fun. I think it's still around. I do know the owner. I don't get it for free. Maybe we do. I don't know. But refollow.com, we used that to listen to teachers and principals at schools and deans of admission. And our educational free video thing would go around and it would follow them. And it would do about 50 a day. And it's a web app that you keep open. Don't close it while it's working. And you start following about 20, 30, 40 of these people, and then it slowly follows them. they start following you back, and you use it in a really targeted way. Do not open it up and then click. You have to actually physically click on them, and it slowly puts it through the thing. These are some really cool tools if you want to reach a bunch of people and get them to at least see what you're doing. I'm all about quality, not about the amount of followers that you have, not about quantity. But this was a fun thing to work on in the very beginning. And I think if you have those tools that you can pay 30, 40, 50 bucks a month to really reach a lot of people to see what you're doing, you will meet a tremendous amount of people. It's like going to a networking event, but you're using Twitter. Another technique that we used very early on are Google spreadsheets and I'm going to give you a little hack. There's a way to set up the day of the week and the time of the day or whatever, and just start just brainstorming your tweets or your content that's less than 100 characters long. You could set the width of the spreadsheet grid to, okay, this is about 100 characters, or if you really want to get nerdy like we did, I made a little tiny formula. I called my friend in the real estate industry who's an Excel expert, and I said, dude, let's make a little formula because I want to be able to type and I want to be able to see how many characters are in that. And then I also want to be able to see when Buffer shortens it to 21 characters, take the characters plus 21, and I want to be able to hit that. And then we can make another little nerdy thing next to it where if it's in the red, that means it's over 140 characters. So really play with those spreadsheets if you're brainstorming. You have a CEO to answer to and somebody wants to see that content. Make sure Excel, our favorite Google spreadsheets, are your friends, meaning that it's working for you. And the coolest thing is you share it, it's a live doc.
Yeah.
How many of you guys are using live docs to have people approve your content?
Yeah, we use everything. We use Google Drive for everything. So like Google Sheets, it's amazing because you can be all in it at the same time, you know.
And there's approval areas and everything. I know it's really old school, but then you can drag it over to Buffer. What tool, so we talked a little bit about, and then another tool we're using across all of our platforms is Buffer. I think it's 50 bucks a month. And how many of you use Buffer? Anybody in the room? Nobody? It is phenomenal to buffer things out. And you can also, at the end of every month, we look at what were the most successful ones, and we take mental note, and we continue to do that. Okay, let's talk about, I'd like to open it up. I don't want to force you guys to talk about a failure or something, but what are you seeing that's working right now? Are there any specific examples of people you're not working with, but you really like what they're doing on social because it's innovative?
This isn't a client example, but I think that you said something that's really important because it's a digital growth, not necessarily social, and we've been focused a lot on social. So one of the things that I think that really is very important is regardless of what your lead generation tactics are, whether you're focused on social or whatever, to really make sure that you have a few different things because they all accomplish different things. I mean, the value of the email is to me like one of the most important things because you can develop really, really amazing relationships with people through email drip campaigns. So that's something that we always try to do is to build out an engine where we have, you know, a strong website where you're being able to provide content, to be able to capture that email address to continue a relationship rather than try to compete on Facebook. And I mean, you know, social is good for what it is, but it's not going to really be able to develop the deeper relationship like, you know, like a solid email campaign. I think that that's still very much alive and well.
How many of you heard about this conference through email? Raise your hand. How many of you heard it through social media? Anybody?
There you go.
We have 1, 2, or 3, maybe maximum. Yeah. All right. So, what are you guys using social to drive into email? Are you using social to drive to phone? Are there any techniques that you're doing, or I mean, Nick, in your case, are you using it mostly to listen for a narrative?
We're using it mostly to listen and to seed out our content. I mean, that's kind of, you know, we're using it as a new distribution channel. We're trying to use a distribution channel to drive people to another distribution channel. But yeah, I think from, you know, what people are doing well and what people are doing well in our industry is anybody that's doing fan reactive very well. That is kind of the new buzzword, and that is kind of where we need to be. You know, there's a perfect example of, I don't know if any of you have watched the show Luke Cage, but there's an innuendo in the show where he goes out to get coffee, and that's an innuendo for Luke Cage having sex. But somebody on Twitter, you know, tweeted about Luke, his girlfriend and him were watching Luke Cage, and Luke Cage came on, and his girlfriend made some kind of like weird noise, and he was like, "We will no longer be watching that show." And then the account tweeted back at him and was like, "Does your girlfriend like coffee?" And that's fantastic because it was a one-off piece of social content. It wasn't planned, and it made its rounds. Somebody copied and somebody screenshotted it. It ended up on Reddit. It ended up being retweeted on Twitter. It spread naturally, and I think that's where when fans are invested like that, they tend to seed out your content for you, so it kind of gets you in a better place.
So you have a really cool project that you work on, but a lot of us, we might not have really cool products that people want to talk about coffee and innuendos. What tips do you have to make their product, and we don't want to fake it. We don't want your hotel to be like, oh, we're really cool and we have somebody interesting here, stay here. But what are some tips to make normal social helpful and fun?
We've tried to make it engaging by having contests like photo contests or video sharing contests, so that people that are fans or customers of the particular brand can have fun with the brand and provide their own content, because then what it does is it opens it up to your entire audience providing free content that you can leverage across your platforms.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I think each and every brand has their personality. Each and every brand has their core. So you might not have an innuendo that you can play off of, but a brand like the Ritz, like the Four Seasons, has a core group of audience, and if you can get people invested in that,
right,
then that works equally as well, and you can be playful with them. You don't have to look at it from a CRM or managing people's complaints, but you can also have fun with them. Oh, I took my kids to the Four Seasons in Maui, and you can help them out and create some kind of engaging content along that way.
So let's move into testimonials using social. I'm a big believer in that. Any of you using putting real customers or testimonials or fun things or silly stuff or user-generated content that you take and say, hey, can we post that video? Can we actually put some money behind it on how you enjoyed our project?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the contest that I just mentioned, that's usually the purpose of doing those for us, is to get the library of user-generated content.
Oh, people are uploading. I thought they were just saying, hey, I entered a win.
No. So what we'll do is we'll actually have a contest, like a photo contest, for example, we did for the Ritz, where it was take your best vacation photo. It's a vacation photo contest, and they could win a weekend stay at the Ritz. So we had hundreds and hundreds of people that submitted their own sort of take on a campaign that they created, that we created a theme for. And it allowed us to be able to get tons of free user-generated content that we could then use throughout social media, throughout email campaigns, on the website, to be able to display in galleries, and got the customers engaged all at the same time. So I think it's a good way.
Another great way to get user-generated content is brand ambassadorship and collaboration programs. For example, Roxbox is a jewelry subscription service, and they have It Girls, and It Girls get the service for free, so they get jewelry just mailed to them to wear, and they in turn share on social media all these pictures of them wearing jewelry, and that's a great way, and it looks authentic, and it kind of is authentic, but it's incentivized, so.
So we have a program, our Media Leaders is based at the Santa Monica Airport, and we are trying to make that airport super kid-friendly. So I started a kids program around airplanes, putting kids in airplanes, and they sit there for 5 minutes and they learn about the yoke, which is the steering wheel from real pilots. And all these people said, oh, you gotta be on social, you gotta do all this stuff. We actually scrapped Facebook and Twitter. We didn't care about it as much. What we did, the only thing we did to grow our social following and use social media in a way that's testimonials, is on our site, when you register for this free event, to put your kid in a real airplane. It's kind of cool. We've put 4,000 kids in airplanes over the last 3 years. So 4,000 kids have learned, this is why I need to pay attention in class, is because there's physics actually has a meaning. And so we have the parents, we force them, we say, look, you register, you put in your real opt-in, a tremendous amount of value on the back end, and then the landing page says, click these share buttons, and it'll share it. We don't care if you follow us, we want to share it, and then there's a big share bar that says, 3,500 shares. And I don't know if you saw that on our social media safety guide page that I showed you guys earlier. We have 5,000 shares for our social media safety guides. And we're not a big brand. We're not a Netflix, right? We're just a small company. But every time we offer value, we ask them, will you share this? And that little tiny social proof of people sharing that number goes up. So people go, well, something must be positive here. Also, every time, this is a nerdy Twitter tactic that we do, every time someone says something nice about us on Twitter that could be a testimonial, testimonial, we actually will take that and we'll heart it on Twitter or like it or favorite it. It changes by every year. And we'll actually, that becomes a repository, not of us saying, hey, we're liking everything, but I only like, or my staff only likes the stuff that we could post on our website that helps us sell more people. So the positive, like, hey, had a great time at this conference, we'll like that one. We'll come back through, we'll look through the likes, and we'll say social was a great repository for us to listen to what people loved about it. We'll post a few of those on the site or screenshot them and put them up there and use social to become a testimonial engine. Are you guys doing any of that? Listening on social and asking them, hey, can we put you, or can we develop a relationship with you, becoming more part of our brand?
When people tweet to us at our agency, we definitely are so excited when they thanked us for a training or whatever we've done. And we respond, we retweet it, and then if it's someone who we think we can have a further conversation with, we'll reach out to them for like an interview on our radio show or a blog post or a video.
All right, we have time for 5. I want to get this answered. We have time for 5 questions. We're running a little bit out of time. Think of a nice, sharp, awesome, good, quick question, and then we're going to come to you guys right when you're done. Cynthia, you had an answer.
Yeah, we do use social as a way to listen to the audience, and I think it's just as important to listen to what they don't like about your brand as it is in terms of what they like. We've unfortunately, you talked about bad examples, we've had a couple of brands that we've worked with where the customers were super, super unhappy, and the customer service was poor, the product wasn't mailed in time, there was lots and lots of real issues with customer service. So really being able to listen to not just what they like, but what they don't like, and really, use it as a way to, reflect internally on some of the operational things that may need to be changed in order to get the clients and customers happy and get the more positive feelings about your brand is important too.
Yeah, and to that point, probably frequently asked questions that they ask on social media, you can put it at the forefront on the front of your website. Okay, let's ask them some questions. Do you have any social media, growing your following questions or engagement questions? Yes.
One thing I've seen that's gauged quite a lot of attention on social is when a brand talks to another brand, and within that then they gain a lot of consumers getting excited and sharing their content. Do you have any tips for that? Have you done that before? Do you have to ask the other brand first?
So for the people on video, she said a lot of engagement comes from when brands are talking to other brands and engaging other brands. Do you have any tips on how we can engage other brands?
We have done quite a bit of that. One of the things that I would say is it's important when you reach out, and typically what we would do is reach out to the brand, and where we start with, though, is taking a look at who their target audience is, because the first thing that you want to make sure is that their target audience is the same as your target audience, because that's when the magic really happens, and making sure that you each have a group of the same people that you want to tap into. And the other thing I would add, you mentioned influencers. That's another great way to do the same thing. So it's not necessarily just partnerships with brands, but influencers that also have the same target audience, where they may have a really great following of the same kind of target market that you have, and be able to do a partnership and some sort of, cool YouTube or, that kind of thing, to be able to tap into their audience as well.
So that's a good point. You're talking to other brands, but she's saying talk to other influencers and engage them. That's cool. Yes.
And when you talk to those influencers, it's just like anything else in building a relationship. You don't just jump in with like, hey, share this or whatever. Like, I will target like specific people that I want to interact with as a brand, and then I will follow their stuff, comment on their stuff, like start a relationship. So then when it is time that I have like, oh, we have these new SEO tools, like, would you mind reviewing them? They know who we are, who I am. It's not just jumping in.
Yeah. Next question. Yes, in the back, sir.
Yeah, so what we're seeing in some of the social media platforms out there, like Instagram, is becoming saturated with spam.
Yeah, Instagram is becoming saturated with spam.
All of us here, of course, as marketers, we're using it and trying to leverage it. Are you guys seeing any new photo apps that are really, because social media beats a peak, and then you kind of get the next wave or whatever.
Yeah.
What's the next
What's the next thing after Instagram that we should look at for photos? Now, caveat, we all heard that Vine's going away, right? How many of you are excited about that? Anybody? No? I mean, is that a bad question to ask? There's a couple of us here. Yeah, Vine's going away. What's next, essentially? What should we look at? Where's engagement going after Instagram?
I mean, I think, with the advent of Snap now, it used to be Snapchat, but I think we're looking as our demographic shift to the younger generations, they're looking more specifically for these almost closed wall networks. These networks that are a little bit more private, a little bit less manicured, more raw, more real. So I don't know if something like that exists yet, but because I haven't come across it, maybe I'm just too old to know what the younger generation is up to, but I think whoever can come up with that app will kind of steal away from what Instagram has become.
I think later on today we're talking about Snapchat stories versus Instagram stories in this room, which I think will be an interesting discussion, because when I talk to kids, I get the privilege to talk to about 30,000 students a year, and I have them raise their hand. I go, how many of you are on Snapchat? And 97% of the room raises their hand, and they giggle and they talk to each other. Okay, hands down. How many of you are using Snapchat story or Instagram stories? And they go, oh, that's not cool. All the kids do that. So a lot of kids nationwide, they go, no, we're still on Snapchat. We use Instagram as, here's my photo of the day. This is my one photo, and it's carefully calculated and curated. And then my message is very not cool, but it's altruistic. And then my Snapchat is very rough and raw, the kids say. It's like me right now, and I'm making a stupid face, and it's loving this hamburger. Here I am with mustard all over my face, right? It's very raw. We're seeing kids are doing that now. Is there anything else that people are on? Is Facebook making a little bit of a comeback? Because we see kids not on it, but do you think in adults they're going back to Facebook?
We see a lot of social traffic still coming from Facebook.
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah.
It tends to be older, though. I read a funny quote that it was from a high school student that said that Facebook is like the Thanksgiving Day dinner table. It's like their aunts, their uncles. So for the younger generation, they're on Facebook, but it's not cool. It's what they use to appease mom and family, photos and stuff.
Okay, next question. Growing your social following. Who's got a question? Yes, up here in front.
How do you track the ROI from your advertising campaigns, whether Snapchat, Facebook, email, influencers? Are there tools or platforms you use for
How do you track, for those of you on video, how do you track the ROI from what you're doing on social, essentially?
So I have this giant spreadsheet that has every possible metric on every channel in Google Analytics, and it's amazing. And then also I use Quintly, which...
Can you spell that?
Quintly is spelled Quintly. Also, if you go to the Bruce Clay blog and you look up if you just go to the social media stuff, I have done comparisons and analysis of different social following software and all kinds of articles and guides because we aim to be helpful, like Josh.
Shameless plug.
It's a great blog. Okay, so anyway, but the point is that I track everything. It depends on Snapchat, for example, for a client. They're not going to get a conversion from Snapchat the way they're using it, but Snapchat is still really valuable because they'll do, so it's 10-second videos, right? So they'll do 25 10-second videos, and it's really like shooting a news segment, right? You're making it interesting, you're getting quotes, you're thinking creatively. You make the Snapchat video, but then you save it, and then you can repurpose it for Facebook and put some money behind it if that's where your audience is, and on your blog and everywhere. So I feel like I went off topic, but yeah.
But yeah, so you said there aren't conversions as much on Snapchat, which sounds right. How are you looking at ROI using your social media efforts?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, we obviously look at engagement rates and Google Analytics and all of the typical things, but we also try to build in offers into the messages so that we can really kind of see. And I have found that on social media ads that we have done offers with, that you can measure sales ROI through it. On one campaign that we did for a restaurant, we got a 22% revenue increase like in 1 week. And that was just because we did a really targeted campaign. It was a really strong offer, and we were able to kind of measure it where the offer was only being offered in our space, so that we knew that it was from that. So just trying to do things like that to be able to tap into, what the conversion rate is, in addition to engagement and some of the other things that you're looking at.
All right. Yes, you have one more thing?
Are you guys using UTM codes?
Okay, UTM codes. How many of you are using Google Analytics first? Okay, great. Most of us are. And then Google Analytics has something called UTM codes, so you can track, hey, somebody came from this, the source, the medium, and the campaign, right?
Exactly. So if you were just looking at social referral traffic, you would see, oh, this many people came from Facebook and this many came from Twitter and so on and so on. But if you put these codes in and you put campaigns, oh, here they came from Facebook on a post that was talking about our tools. Here they came when we were talking about this article. So they're really valuable. We just came out with an article last week about how to build a UTM tracking code. If you need any help with that, you should try it.
How many of you have used UTM tracking codes to make Google Analytics better? I've got a nerdy tactic that we use. If you use Buffer, it puts them in there for you for the most part. But if you take a UTM tracking code that somebody made for you with the campaign, the medium, and the source, the campaign is where you put the words that were in the campaign, all lowercase. Like they were selling today's burger for $2.99 or something like that. You put something in there, the source being it's Facebook and the medium being it was an ad. If you put it all in a Google spreadsheet or a Microsoft Excel, you can pull those pieces out, the UTM, and you can copy and paste them down so you can build them yourself very, very quickly without a plugin or a tool, and you can throw those links and test them at the end of every social thing without using a special tool. We do that a lot. We just kind of hack it, test it, did it work, and so on. One more question. Yes?
Is there a certain ratio or percentage on, you want social media to be authentic, so you're going to post something like, I'm in sports nutrition, so a lot of it is gym selfies from my brand ambassadors. So the trouble I'm having is when I should ask them to drive someone to a retailer to purchase a product or give them an action. So is there like a certain ratio on that?
So for the people on video, is there a certain ratio that we should do to where we're selling versus engaging? Is that answer? Yeah, what's your ratio? Give it to us real quick on what do you suggest kind of at the top?
Yeah, we kind of tried to, I'm trying to think in terms of percentages. I try to keep to like a 60% authentic, like 40% offer driven, call to action driven, like somewhere between 60, 40, 70, 30, depending on the brand. Yeah, but I do think that those call to action offer messages are just as important as the authentic messages. The key is that balance, so that, because you don't want to be all pictures from the gym. Like you want to make sure you're driving customers to your website too, and then you don't want to be all salesy either. So it's just finding that balance. So kind of play with it a little bit, because every brand's a little bit different, but I kind of find that 60, 40, 70, 30 is usually pretty typical.
Nick?
Yeah, I would say no more than 2/3 authentic, and then the remaining third being kind of push to sell.
I think the same thing they said, like it should be more authentic and meant to engage. I know for Arctic Zero and Roxbox, they don't give influencers any instructions. They just free for all, like do what you want. So it's awesome to see what people come up with on their own.
I want to challenge all of you to be better digital marketers. Try going a month without selling on Facebook at all. Try some of these where you just make something freakishly cool that's fun and see what happens, and put a hashtag, see what you get. Just try that, because I think one of the keys even to your heart story is test things, break them, see what happens.
Oh, and may I say one thing?
Yes.
Because I never got to say like how that went well. Like now it's great, and I have hundreds of new followers every day. I've become like a brand ambassador for 2 things. So all the goals that I wanted were met. And the reason I did it with my own stuff first is because I feel way more comfortable breaking my own brand than a client or our agency. So
yeah. That's cool. Start with your content. Try and make it so cool that you would want to watch it. Remember, you're all competing with Red Bull, and they're a company that sells an energy drink, and yet they are one of the cooler brands that has content. So if you can compete with them, you're doing pretty good. Okay, let's give a round of applause for these awesome people.